I never thought a casual night out would lead to one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. It was late July in Chicago, one of those perfect summer evenings where the air is warm but not sticky, and the city feels more alive than usual. My friends and I were bar hopping along the riverfront, a tradition, whenever we had nothing else to do and needed a break from the grind. That night started like many others. A few beers, jokes flying around, loud music playing overhead, and the Cubs on television. It was the kind of night where you just let go and exist in the moment. Somewhere around the second bar, I struck up a conversation with a guy standing next to me at the counter. His name was Ethan. He was tall, lean, with short, sandy hair, and an easy smile that made him instantly likable. We ended up talking for a solid hour. Baseball was the entry point. We were both yelling at the television during a botched play, and that turned into shared complaints about Chicago traffic, favorite hiking spots, and eventually, Instagram handles. His account looked normal. Nothing flashy, but enough photos to suggest he was social, outdoorsy, into fitness, and had a decent circle of friends. A couple of selfies, some group shots, and scenic photos from what looked like a trip to Costa Rica. When my group moved on to the next bar, I gave Ethan a casual fist bump and a see you around. That was that. I honestly didn't think we'd speak again. These types of bar conversations never really go anywhere, guys. Make a connection in the moment, maybe exchange socials, and then move on with life. But the next night, I was out again, this time at an outdoor bar by the lake for my buddy Jason's birthday. We were mid-song, singing horribly to a live cover band, when I felt someone tap my shoulder. I turned, expecting one of my friends, and there he was, Ethan. Same friendly grin, same casual energy. He clapped me on the back like we'd been best friends for years. "I love this spot," he said. "I'm here every Saturday." I laughed, a bit surprised but not weirded out yet. "What are the odds?" I replied. I introduced him to my friends, and he blended in with zero effort. He brought over shots, made everyone laugh, and by the end of the night, it was like he had always been part of our circle. Looking back now, I wish I had paid more attention to how easily he inserted himself into the group. But at the time, all I saw was a chill guy who happened to enjoy the same bars I did. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan became a familiar face. We didn't hang out one-on-one often, but he always seemed to show up wherever I was. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. Chicago's bar scene isn't massive. If you hit the same areas on weekends, it's not uncommon to run into the same people. But it started feeling oddly timed, like he knew where I'd be. One Friday, I posted a quick story from a rooftop bar in River North. Less than an hour later, Ethan appeared. "Dude, I was literally just around the corner," he said, laughing like fate had brought us together again. I remember thinking it was funny, even cool running into a new friend like that. We had drinks, talked about weekend plans, and he mentioned he'd been thinking about doing something spontaneous. "You ever been to the Grand Canyon?" he asked. I said no, but that it was on my bucket list. A few days later, he texted me, "Yo, hear me out quick Grand Canyon trip? Just you and me. Flights are cheap and I found a sick Airbnb." He even sent screenshots of flight prices and the Airbnb listing. 3 days. We fly out Friday, back Monday. Think about it. It felt sudden, but I'll admit I was tempted. I had vacation days stacked up. I'd been feeling burned out, and something about escaping with no plans sounded refreshing. I asked a few friends if they'd join, but no one could take time off on such short notice. Ethan, of course, was fine with it just being the two of us. That Friday, we flew out to Phoenix. Ethan had booked everything in advance: flight, car, Airbnb. I offered to pitch in, but he waved it off. "Don't worry, bro. I've got you." The Airbnb was a modern little house just outside the city, surrounded by cactus and open desert. Quiet. Too quiet, actually. When we arrived, the sun had already gone down. I stepped inside and immediately noticed something. One bedroom. I turned to Ethan. "There's only one room?" He tossed me the couch cushions and said, "It's a pullout. Take the living room. Besides, it's on me. You're getting a free trip to Arizona, man." I smiled awkwardly and didn't argue. But deep down, something didn't feel right. That night, I lay on the sofa bed, tired but uneasy. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I woke up to soft footsteps. I cracked one eye open and saw Ethan moving through the dark, heading to the kitchen. He poured himself some water, stood there for a while, then walked back into the bedroom. The way he moved slow, deliberate sent a chill up my spine, but I convinced myself I was just paranoid. The next morning, Ethan woke up early and seemed energized, like he'd slept a full 10 hours. Meanwhile, I was groggy from the bad sleep and still trying to shake the unease from the night before. He was already dressed and making coffee by the time I pulled myself off the couch. "Rise and shine, man, we've got hiking to do," he said cheerfully, handing me a mug. I forced a smile and tried to push away the weird vibe. Maybe I was just overthinking everything. We drove out to the Grand Canyon that morning. I'd seen pictures a million times, but standing there in person was something else entirely. It was massive, endless, almost surreal. Ethan suggested we hike the Bright Angel Trail, one of the more popular paths. The sun was already blazing by the time we started, and within 15 minutes, I was sweating buckets and struggling to breathe. Ethan, on the other hand, was practically jogging down the trail, turning around every now and then to laugh and tell me to catch up. We stopped at several scenic points to rest and take photos. I'll admit, it was beautiful. In those moments, it felt like a real vacation. Just two guys soaking in nature. We even took a few goofy selfies that, at the time, seemed innocent enough. After about 3 hours of hiking, we made our way back up and drove to a deli nearby to grab food. The ride back to Phoenix was mostly quiet. I assumed Ethan was tired too, but when we got back to the Airbnb, he was ready to go again. "Nap, then bar crawl?" he asked. I just nodded, too tired to protest. That night, we hit a strip of local bars. We drank more than we should have again, and once again, Ethan didn't seem fazed. He threw back shots like water and danced like he owned every room we walked into. I, on the other hand, was fading fast. When we finally got back to the Airbnb, I collapsed onto the sofa bed and plugged in my phone to charge beside me. I vaguely remember music playing from Ethan's speaker in the other room, then nothing. But in the middle of the night, I woke up again. This time, I didn't know what had stirred me, maybe a sound, maybe just instinct, but I immediately noticed something was off. My phone, which I had left charging on the floor beside me, was now unplugged and sitting on the table a few feet away. The charging cord still lay on the floor, like it had been pulled out gently. I blinked, confused. Did I move it in my sleep? It didn't make sense. The couch creaked as I sat up and scanned the room. Everything was still, but the air felt heavier than before. I lay back down, but sleep didn't come as easily this time. My thoughts were racing. Had Ethan moved my phone? Why would he? What for? I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I rolled onto it and accidentally knocked it onto the table. But that didn't explain why the charging cord was still on the floor, untouched. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted off again. The next day was slower. Neither of us had the energy to hike, and honestly, I was relieved. I needed space to breathe. We spent the afternoon wandering around Phoenix, checking out neighborhoods, parks, even a botanical garden. It was mostly quiet between us, but Ethan remained upbeat. I noticed he was constantly on his phone, texting someone, scrolling Instagram. I didn't think much of it until later that night. Once again, we drank. Not as heavily this time, but enough to feel it. Ethan insisted I take the bed since he had it the first 2 nights. I didn't argue, I just wanted real sleep. I moved my things into the bedroom, plugged my phone in beside me, and collapsed under the covers. I didn't lock the door. Why would I? I mean, things had been weird, sure, but nothing serious had happened. Until that night. I woke up to a soft creak near the foot of the bed. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and I saw Ida's silhouette, standing completely still. My stomach dropped. It was Ethan. He wasn't moving, just standing there. For some reason, I didn't scream immediately. I was frozen, trying to make sense of it. Then, slowly, he sat down on the bed and began rubbing my foot. That snapped me out of it. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, jerking back. Ethan flinched but didn't answer. His face was calm, like this was nothing out of the ordinary. I got up, pushed him off the bed, and demanded he leave the room. He stood there for a second, then silently walked out. I locked the door this time, yes, with one of those twist locks that a butter knife could probably bypass, but it was something. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, heart racing, trying to piece things together. I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't drunken behavior anymore. This was intentional. I needed to get out. I packed everything I had in silence. Toiletries, chargers, clothes. I shoved them all into my duffel bag as quickly and quietly as I could. Ethan didn't say a word. He He was sitting on the couch when I stepped into the living room, staring straight ahead like a mannequin, completely motionless. It was unnerving. He didn't ask what I was doing. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched me expressionless, as if none of it mattered. I ordered an Uber to the airport and waited outside with my bag. The sun hadn't even risen yet. My skin crawled as I stood there, heart racing. I didn't relax until the Uber pulled up, and I climbed into the back seat without looking back. The ride to the airport was quiet. I stared out the window, trying to process what had just happened. I kept replaying everything: his sudden appearances, the way he followed my Instagram stories, how his energy shifted in those quiet moments. I felt stupid for ignoring the signs. I paid extra to change my flight seat. I couldn't risk sitting near him. On the plane, I kept my head down the whole time, pretending to sleep. I didn't tell anyone about what happened right away. I needed to digest it, to figure out whether I was overreacting or whether it really was as bad as it felt. When I finally told my close friends, the reactions were immediate and chilling. "Dude, I told you something was off about him," one said. Another pointed out that every time we'd seen Ethan, he'd been alone. No mutual friends, no familiar faces, just Ethan, floating into our world like a shadow. That pushed me to dig a little deeper. I went back to Ethan's Instagram and found one of his older poster groups shot with a few guys at a lake. No one was tagged, but one face looked familiar. I sent a DM to that guy. "Hey, are you still friends with Ethan?" I asked. The reply came within 10 minutes. "Hell no, that guy's a freak. Stay away." He then told me he'd had a similar experience and nothing violent, but enough to cut ties completely. According to him, multiple people had blocked Ethan after incidents that crossed lines. The message ended with something I'll never forget. "You're lucky. It could have been worse." I blocked Ethan on every platform, deleted his number. That chapter of my life ended there, but the feeling stayed. I still don't know what he wanted access to my phone. Something else? I just know that something was wrong, deeply wrong, and that instinct I tried to suppress was right all along. It was the kind of summer night that felt too perfect to be real humid but breezy, with the distant hum of ocean waves and the faint smell of salt water in the air. I had just gotten home from college for a short break, the kind where you barely unpack your bags before you're already making plans. That night, it was just me, Tyler, and Jamalmi, two best friends since high school. We had all gone our separate ways for college, but every summer, we made it a point to reunite, if only for a few days. Tyler's family owned a small beach house in a sleepy coastal town called Glen Harbor. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a tiny living room, and a patio that overlooked a narrow path leading to the beach. But for us, it was perfect. A weekend of drinking, beach bonfires, and pretending we were kids again. That first evening was pure nostalgia. We grilled burgers, played stupid drinking games, and laughed until we couldn't breathe. As the clock neared midnight, the mood shifted calmer, quieter. We were sitting on the back patio with half-empty beers when Jamal suddenly said, "Let's go to the beach." We hesitated for a second, then all stood up at once like it had been decided for us. We didn't bring towels or speakers, just a flashlight and the hoodies off our backs. The air had cooled, but not enough to bite. The path to the beach was silent except for our footsteps and the occasional crunch of sand underfoot. The beach itself was empty, just as we expected. A wide stretch of pale sand, the moon peeking through scattered clouds, and waves breaking in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. It was peaceful in the way only a dark, empty beach can be equal parts soothing and eerie. We walked along the shoreline, letting the waves occasionally brush our feet. There were no lights, no sounds beyond nature, just us and the endless black horizon. We cracked a few jokes, reminisced about old parties and ridiculous high school moments. Then we stopped walking when Tyler pointed out something ahead. "Is that someone out there?" he asked, squinting toward the surf. At first, I didn't see anything. But then, slowly, a figure emerged in the distance, a lone person walking near the edge of the water. The shape was vague, more shadow than form, but there was no mistaking it. We weren't alone. We froze. No one said anything at first. We just stared at the figure as it moved slowly along the shoreline, maybe 30 or 40 yards away. It didn't look like someone out for a walk. The way it moved was strange. Its steps were stiff, like each movement was deliberate but awkward, as if it had forgotten how to walk naturally. Its arms hung unnaturally still by its sides, and the head was tilted slightly downward, like it was watching the sand, or maybe something buried beneath it. Jamal broke the silence first. "Probably just some drunk tourist," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Tyler turned off the flashlight. "Let's not draw attention," he muttered. We stood still for another minute, watching. The figure kept walking, slow and steady, never turning toward us. Then it stopped. No motion, no wind. Just the distant crash of waves and the three of us standing frozen in the dark. The figure now stood completely still at the edge of the surf, facing the ocean. Something about it was off. Not just creepy wrong, like a glitch in reality. We tried to shake it off. Tyler made a joke something about it being a horror movie cliché. We nervously laughed, trying to force the tension away. After a few minutes, we decided to keep walking. But we didn't go far. That thing or person, whatever it was, had unsettled all of us. We stopped again near one of the lifeguard towers and collapsed into the sand. "That was weird," I said finally. "No kidding," Jamal replied. "Still watching us, you think?" "I don't want to find out," Tyler muttered. I glanced back in the direction of the figure. It was gone. At least, we thought it was, until Jamal pointed out a shape farther down the beach. Not moving, not walking, standing still, in the exact same posture. Except now, it was closer. We didn't say anything. The mood had shifted again. That summer buzz we'd been riding earlier was completely gone, replaced by something heavier. The moon slid behind a patch of clouds, and for a few seconds, the entire beach went dim. Then, we heard something. A soft splash. Then another, like footsteps in shallow water. And then the unmistakable sound of someone running through the sand fast, heavy, full sprint. "Run," Tyler gasped, and we didn't need to be told twice. We ran without thinking. Our feet pounded the sand, slipping with every step, but adrenaline carried us forward. I could hear Jamal behind me yelling something, but I couldn't make out the words over the rush of blood in my ears. My lungs were burning, and my legs felt like they'd give out, but none of us dared stop to look back. We reached the steps leading up to the boardwalk and scrambled up them, nearly tripping over ourselves. Only when we hit the pavement did we finally stop and turn around. There was nothing behind us. The beach was empty again. No running figure, no movement at all. Just the ocean and the sound of waves lapping calmly against the shore like nothing had happened. We stood there, out of breath and pale-faced, trying to make sense of it. Jamal was the first to speak. "That wasn't normal. That thing ran at us. You saw that, right?" Tyler nodded slowly, still staring down at the sand. It didn't even build up speed. 1 second it was standing still, the next it was sprinting. We didn't talk much on the way back to the beach house. The walk was quiet, tense. All of us were replaying it in our heads, but no one wanted to be the first to say how scared we really were. When we got back, we locked every window and door, turned off the lights, closed the blinds, and then we just sat. No one wanted to go to bed. We stayed in the living room, trying to joke, trying to normalize it, but there was a nervous energy none of us could shake. Eventually, sometime near dawn, we all dozed off on the couch. The next day, we tried to brush it off. It had to be a prank, Jamal suggested. Maybe someone messing with tourists. Could have been a local guy. Or someone high as hell, Tyler added, tweaking out on something. But none of us really believed it. The way the figure moved, the lack of any footprints when we turned around, and that feeling like we were being watched by something that wasn't human. We stayed at the beach house one more night, but we didn't go back outside after dark. No more midnight walks, no more chasing nostalgia. We stuck to the living room, kept the lights on, and barely slept. Even though we left the next morning, part of that night never left us. We all tried to move on after that weekend. Back to school, back to the routine, but something felt different. Tyler and I kept in touch regularly more than usual, honestly. I think we were both trying to process what had happened without really talking about it. Jamal, on the other hand, went a little quiet. He was never the type to be shaken, but something clearly stuck with him. About 2 weeks later, Tyler texted me at 2 a.m. "Bro, I had a dream. He was in my room." I didn't respond right away. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Was he just standing there?" "Yeah, soaking wet. Just standing in the corner, not moving." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, because I had been having the exact same dream. The figure was always in the same place, just a few feet from my bed, face in shadow, water dripping onto the floor. It never moved, never spoke, just stood there, watching. Some nights I woke up with my heart racing, the sound of footsteps echoing in the hall, but every time I checked, nothing was there. I didn't want to believe this was something supernatural. I tried telling myself that we'd gotten scared, had a weird encounter, and now our brains were playing tricks on us. Maybe it was sleep paralysis, a shared hallucination, a lingering fear we hadn't dealt with properly. That's what I wanted to believe. But then came the post. It showed up in a local Facebook group for Glen Harbor residents. Someone had taken a blurry photo at the beach a few nights prior around 1 a.m. It was dark and grainy, but you could clearly see a figure standing alone at the water's edge. The caption read, "Anyone else seen this guy at night?" Creepy AF. I recognized the shape instantly. That posture, that tilted head, that eerie stillness. And the comments made it worse. Dozens of people replied saying they'd seen him too, not just recently, but over the past year. Some said he just stood there for hours, unmoving. Others claimed they'd seen him walk into the ocean and vanish. One person said they found wet footprints on their porch, with no trail leading to or from them. That's when I realized we hadn't imagined it. We weren't overreacting. Whatever we saw that night was real. After reading that post, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to that night, the way the figure stood still like a statue, the way it sprinted at us without warning, and now the dreams. The same figure, the same posture, over and over. Tyler and I talked more frequently after that, sometimes late at night, sometimes in the middle of the day. But we both admitted something that chilled us even more. The dreams didn't stop. In fact, they became more vivid. One night, I woke up drenched in sweat, convinced I had heard breathing right next to me. Another time, I swore I saw wet footprints on my bedroom floor, but they vanished within minutes, like they had never been there. I stopped talking about it with anyone else. Jamal had already stopped replying. Tyler was the only one who still got it. Then, one day, I got another message from him. "He's getting closer." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to. That night, I had the worst dream yet. I was lying in bed, unable to move. Everything in my room looked normal until I glanced toward the corner. He was there, closer than ever, not at the wall anymore, but standing right beside the bed. I could see the outline of his soaked jeans, water pooling on the hardwood floor. His arms hung limp, his head tilted at a sharp angle, and his eyes wide, bulging and locked onto mine. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I could only stare back. When I finally jolted awake, the corner of the room was empty, but the floor next to my bed was wet. I don't know what we saw that night on the beach. I don't know if it was a ghost, a spirit, something ancient, or something else entirely. But I know this: we weren't supposed to see him. And whatever it is, it remembers us. I moved out of my dorm a few months later, transferred schools, changed numbers. I even stopped using social media for a while. I never went back to Glen Harbor. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night and check the corners of my room. I keep a towel next to my bed now just in case. Tyler and I haven't spoken in a long time. I wish I could say it was just life getting in the way. But I think deep down we both know the truth. Whatever we saw that night didn't stay on the beach. There's something about being out on the water at night that's both peaceful and unnerving. Maybe it's the stillness, maybe it's the isolation, or maybe it's knowing that out there, if something goes wrong, there's nowhere to run. That summer, I had just turned 19 and was working a dockhand job in a small New England town where my family had a modest marina. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me access to the family boat, a mid-sized runabout I could take out whenever I wasn't working. Most nights, that meant cruising along the coast, music on, a few drinks with friends. It was our version of summer freedom. One particular evening started off like many others. I had picked up my best friend Nick after his shift at a local seafood shack. He was one of the few in our group with a fake ID, so he'd picked up some beers on the way. We planned to meet the rest of our crew later, but for now, it was just the two of us, drifting along the coast, waiting for the sun to disappear behind the harbor. We ended up anchoring in a small, bay-quiet, scenic, popular with locals who wanted a calm place to hang out without being too far from shore. There were 2 other boats nearby. One of them was blasting classic rock, which we didn't mind. We floated between them, drinking and joking, watching the sky shift from gold to purple to black. At around 7:30, one of the nearby boats pulled anchor and left. Then, about 15 minutes later, the other one cut its music and went silent. We figured they were about to leave too. Nick and I, already buzzed, started shouting things like, "Hey, keep the music going, just dumb party stuff." No one responded. We were sitting on the bow, legs dangling over the edge, when Nick suddenly stopped talking. "Yo, look at that boat," he muttered. I turned around and saw them 3 people standing completely still at the edge of the now silent boat, just staring at us. At first I laughed. I thought maybe they were messing with us, or maybe they couldn't hear what we were yelling. But Nick didn't laugh. He just kept watching them, his body tense, beer still in his hand, untouched. That was when I noticed how weirdly still they were. No movement, no talking, just silhouettes, barely illuminated by their boat's anchor light, watching. The longer we stared, the stranger it felt. Something was wrong with the way they were standing. No one moved. No one spoke. Just 3 silhouettes, unmoving, rigid, like mannequins left out on deck. Their faces were in shadow, but we could feel their eyes on us. I kept expecting them to wave or call out, to do anything to prove they were just normal people, but they didn't. After a minute of this weird standoff, I nervously joked, $20 if they're just sleepwalking. I tried to laugh, but it came out weak. Nick didn't even react. And then one of them laughed. It was low, gravelly, slow, almost like a forced exhale through grit. A man's voice, but something about it made my skin crawl. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. I froze. Nick stood up suddenly and said, "Screw this. Let's get out of here." But I wasn't ready to leave just yet. I still thought maybe it was all just in our heads drunk paranoia. I started laughing, mocking Nick for being jumpy, while I casually leaned over to grab another beer. That's when we heard it. 2 splashes. Loud and heavy, like 2 bodies dropping into the water. I spun around. Only 1 silhouette remained on the boat. The other 2 were gone. My buzz disappeared instantly. Nick dropped the anchor rope and ran toward the back of our boat, yelling, "Get the engine on, now!" I fumbled with the keys, my hands suddenly clumsy and wet with sweat. The water was quiet again, too quiet. I looked over the stern and that's when I saw it. A hand gripping the edge of our boat. It was pale, soaking wet, knuckles white from tension. I couldn't see a face, just the top of a head rising out of the dark water, slowly. Nick raised the anchor like it weighed nothing. I slammed the key into the ignition and turned it. The engine sputtered once twice and then roared to life. Without thinking, I pushed the throttle forward. Boom. We hit something underwater, probably a sandbar. The boat lurched forward violently, throwing me against the steering console, but the sudden jolt dislodged whoever was trying to climb aboard. I shifted into reverse, hard, dragging us backward into deeper water, praying the propeller didn't catch anything. We were moving, but my heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear the engine. Nick shouted, "They're swimming after us," and pointed to the ripples behind. I didn't look. I just kept going. I kept the throttle pushed forward until we were well outside the bay. Only when I could no longer see the outline of the other boat did I ease up. Nick and I looked at each other, both of us wide-eyed, breathing hard. For a few moments, neither of us said a word. Then Nick exploded. What the hell was that? Who were those people? I didn't have an answer. I was still trying to process what had just happened. Part of me wanted to believe it was some kind of twisted prank, but nothing about what we'd seen felt staged. The silence, the way they move at her didn't move. That horrible laugh, the sudden splashes. It was all too real. We decided to head back to the main dock, but not before gathering ourselves and making sure the boat hadn't been damaged. Miraculously, there was no serious harm done. We floated for a few minutes, picking up the gear that had been tossed around when we hit the sandbar. It was only after we calmed down a bit that Nick noticed something. "There's a boat coming," he said, pointing toward the mouth of the bay. I turned, and sure enough, there it was. A small motorboat, and it was headed straight for us. At first, I thought it might just be another group leaving the bay, but something about the way it moved made my stomach twist. It was too direct, too fast. I didn't see any lights on it. No music. Just a dark silhouette gliding across the water like it had locked onto us. "No way," I whispered. Nick didn't wait for me to think it through. "Go!" he shouted, and I gunned the engine again. Our boat wasn't built for speed, but I pushed it as hard as I could. The engine roared, and we flew across the water, bouncing over small waves. The other boat was gaining. I could see it more clearly now. No one was at the wheel, or at least, not visibly. Just that same eerie stillness we had seen before. 5 minutes passed. The shoreline came into view. The docks, lights, safety. That's when I veered hard left, aiming for the shallows near the boat ramp. Nick nearly lost his balance. "What are you doing?" "Trust me," I said through gritted teeth. The sudden turn threw the other boat off. It veered right, overshooting us by just a few seconds before fading into the dark again. I didn't slow down until we hit the dock. We scrambled off the boat, tying it up with shaky hands. The dock was empty, the surrounding marina quiet except for the occasional clang of ropes and the creaking of other boats bobbing gently in the water. I expected to hear a motor approaching behind us, but there was nothing, just silence. Nick and I sat down on the wooden planks, soaked in sweat and sea spray, trying to catch our breath. For a while, we didn't say anything. My mind kept replaying that image of the hand rising out of the water, of the boat with no visible driver chasing us in the dark. Eventually, we stumbled back to the house, met up with a few friends, and told them what had happened. As expected, they didn't fully believe us. They laughed at the parts that scared us the most, chalking it up to alcohol and boat brain. One even suggested maybe someone was trying to steal our boat and we scared them off. Nick didn't say much that night. He just sat there, eyes distant, clutching his beer like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Later that night, while we were cleaning up the mess on the boat, I looked out across the dark water and there it was again. A boat. No lights. No sound. Just drifting, barely visible in the moonlight, 100 yards out. I froze. "Nick," I whispered, "look." He followed my gaze, squinting toward the water. The boat was just sitting there. No motion, no wake, like it had been placed there. Then it moved, just a few feet like a twitch. Nick turned to me, his voice low. "We're leaving, now." We grabbed the rest of our stuff, jumped into my car, and left that dock behind without looking back. I didn't even care that we left the cooler and half our gear on the pier. We never used that boat again. Not that summer, not the next. It just sat there dry docked and forgotten. Nick and I never really spoke about that night again. Not in detail. The most we ever said was, "That was messed up," followed by silence. But I still think about it. About how something followed us, watched us, waited for us. I don't know if it wanted to scare us, or if we just got away before it could do more. A few weeks later, I got a message from someone I didn't know. It was a guy named Andrew. His profile said he was from the same town. His message was simple. "Hey, I saw your boat at the dock the other night. Thought I recognized it. You guys okay?" I stared at it for a while before replying. We hadn't told anyone outside our close circle what happened. I responded cautiously. "Yeah, we're fine. Why?" He messaged back almost immediately. "Because I saw something weird. Thought maybe it was just me. But then someone else mentioned it too." He said he'd been walking his dog near the marina one night when he saw a small boat with no lights drifting into the inlet. It was past midnight. He thought it was strange, but not unheard of until he saw a figure on board. Dude wasn't moving, just standing at the bow. Didn't respond when I waved or shouted, gave me chills. That confirmed everything for me. It wasn't just in our heads. Others had seen it too. Out of curiosity or maybe something darker, I asked him to describe the figure. His reply sent a shiver through me. Tall, thin, soaking wet, just staring. That was it. The same. Exactly the same. After that, I started noticing more whispers online. A local subreddit had a post about a creepy boat that appeared randomly near the docks at night. People claimed it never docked, never made a sound. Some thought it was an old ghost story revived by teens trying to go viral, but those who really saw it, they knew it wasn't a joke. Nick moved away that fall. He didn't say much, just packed up and left town. I think whatever happened that night left something in him he didn't want to face. And honestly, I can't blame him. As for me, I stayed. But I never went near the marina after dark again. And the boat? Still there, still dry docked, still untouched. My family asks me why I don't take it out anymore, and I always make some excuse about being too busy or not needing the hassle. But the truth is simple. I don't trust what's out there anymore. Whatever we saw that night, it didn't act like a person. It didn't move like a person. And when it chased us, it didn't do it out of rage or fun. It did it because it could. Some nights, when the wind shifts just right, I swear I can hear that slow, wet laugh echoing faintly from the direction of the harbor. And every time, I close my window, turn off the lights, and tell myself, never again.